Speech pitch by Iska Sak.
Yeah. Hi there, and welcome back to Speech Pitch by Iska Sak. I am Orchid, and today we have with us Professor Mathew from Idiap. So, hi.
Hi, I am not yet a full professor. I am still a doctor.
Yeah.
I work at Idiap Research Institute, where I am a senior research scientist working on speech, audio, and sign language processing.
Yeah, good to have you with us. So, can you explain me a bit about what's your research interest and what you are currently working on?
Well, the interest for me is when I was finishing my bachelor's, I was interested in either going for signal processing or control systems. That was my choice. I wanted to make either go this side or the other side.
Yeah.
And I was finishing my instrumentation control engineering, and my professor at the time said, you could choose if you want to do signal processing, although I didn't do any signal processing course in my in the bachelor. So he said, hey, it's not very difficult, since you did all the analysis with Fourier and Laplace and so on, it's only that which transform you are looking at.
Yeah.
And it just makes the difference. And so I applied to IIT Madras and I joined. I got into one of the best labs, which was led by Professor Yagna at IIT Madras, and I joined that lab. And from that time onwards, speech has been fascinating, the part of my research life.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of activities going on, and my project I was trying to work on how to combine when we do speech processing, we do a windowing and then we get a capital feature, and then we model that capital feature, or now we can take filter banks, energies, and so on. How that one segment information you try to do for speech, speaker, and so on. And my professor was putting me a problem at that time. The speaker is not just about that one frame of information, where you may figure out the differences due to the change of difference in the length of vocal tract of people and so on. But people also have stylistic differences which cannot be coming in one frame. Yeah. So you have to look at supra-segmental, over many segments.
That's
so how we can combine these two information. That was the problem I started working on, and it was not a standard master's program where you do coursework and then a small project and you are done. Actually, the coursework was not big hefty.
Yeah.
You have to do a research, and you have to research, and the thesis has to go outside the institute to review, and then only you will get your master's degree.
Yeah.
So we had to do something substantial inside that. So there we came up with this method. At the time I started working with how to get this information, model them, and combine them. So I looked at what the methodology called, today you can call it as a decision fusion. Mm-hmm. So I developed a system which was purely based on capital features and dynamic programming that gives an evidence. Mm-hmm. And then I trained neural networks that takes into information such as how the pitch accents and word duration and energy accents, all this information you feed it to a neural network to verify as person, and then you take these probabilities, the estimate of probabilities coming from these two different systems, and come up with fusion methods. And at that time I was trying to look at one of those methods called Dempsey-Schaffer combination rule, and there are many rules for probability combination, but I looked at that combination rule in my thesis, and that started my at the time I was working on speaker verification. Mm-hmm. So it was a wonderful experience. We all had great time. And in parallel, there was a system on a project I was also employed on was we wanted to check emails from any part of the world. I am talking about mid 90s, late 90s at that time, mid to late 90s, and we want to check emails from any part of the world, and we didn't have so many internet cafes and so on. So we were working on a tech system which we developed actually, and it used to work, where we put together a speaker verification system with a rule-based synthesizer. And what we do is you can call from any part of the world, the phone in India, and it can verify through voice. And then it was a text-dependent system, and then the system could tell you how many emails you have in your in your inbox. It can tell you, and in those days it was good because we were not getting junk mails and so on. You will get 5 emails, 2 emails, 3 emails in a day. And so and then it can tell you for the first 5 emails who has sent it, and you could instruct it like by pressing keys, which today you do it right over phone, and you can, and it can read a few lines of your email, like first few lines, first 3-4 lines it can read. So it was a application that we put together, and it was an interesting experience. And many of the things at the time we developed, we didn't have big computers. We had systems with 64 MB, 256 MB RAMs, and we didn't have drivers, so we had to write all these things. We didn't have MFCC extractors or all those things which the tools today you have for handy. We didn't have it, and even neural networks, which I used in my thesis, I implemented completely
from scratch.
From scratch, I implemented it, and so on. So that was my master's stage. So I was very interested in still continuing in speech, and my dilemma was whether to stay in India or go abroad. And I had already worked with one of the best professors in India. So naturally I decided to go for abroad. And that time I was fascinated by, when I was working with speaker verification and so on, Idiap was one such institute which was also working on speaker recognition. One of the interesting thing what I found with Idiap from other places was they used to keep all those reports online. So I used to read those reports. I would so it you know, Google was coming right around that time, 98. I am talking about when Google was launched. You know, so at that time, getting a paper, conference paper, reading and so on, it was difficult at the time. So we so I used to look at all kind of search, Alta Vista, Yahoo, and then Google. One of my, in fact, the computer science friends even didn't tell me Google. It came through a civil engineering friend who was said, "Hey Mathew, do you know Google? It gives you nice search results." But even before that, Idiap had this all these reports, theses online. It was at the time it was PostScripts. PDF was yet not so popular. It was PostScript files. It will be there. So I used to download them, print and read, that kind of thing. So I was saying, oh, that's interesting institute. I should apply there. So I wrote to the director of the institute, Professor Hervé Boulard, and I was very naive. I wrote, look, I had a publication at the time accepted for Interspeech 99 at the time, based on my master thesis work, and I wrote to him, and next day I get an email, oh, I am happy you apply to EPFL doctoral school, and I am happy to take you, and that's where I came to work with Hervé. And I don't know if you know or not, like Hervé and Nelson Morgan are the one who kind of established the whole hybrid HMM-ANN system for speech recognition. So this was again the advice of my another colleague, collaborator. He said, hey, look, you are going to somebody who had actually come up with this whole hybrid HMM-ANN system. So and it was a change of, also it was for me good, because I learned a lot about speaker verification and all those things when I was doing my thesis at IIT Madras. So it was a welcome change, because when I came to work with Hervé, it was on speech recognition and specifically focusing on pronunciation variation. It was a hot topic in those days. It was a very hot topic in pronunciation variations, and then the difficulty was people when they speak fast or slow, and the people normally speak, there was variations, and it could change. Something implicitly changes in the acoustics, something can explicitly change at the phonetic level, and so on. So people were looking at this problem, and I think I was fortunate at that time to start working on this problem. And from there onwards, the path was more or less clear. So again, when I was doing my thesis, we didn't have hybrid HMM-ANN system implementation. So again, go there, you implement your system right from training to decoding, all those stuff. We did that. It was a wonderful journey. After that, it was Berkeley, where I had chance to go into some little bit of NLP work like punctuation prediction and so on, working a lot with very multidisciplinary people, like people working on translation, distillation, and all those kind of things. So from there it came on, and then I came back to Idiap as a permanent researcher. So I will stop you so that you have some more questions to ask. So I can tell my research journey. After that, we'll take a break here. So this is up to my PhD, postdoc, and so on. So Berkeley was a postdoc for me, and that's what it is.
So like, how do you see like the changing landscape of speech, like from the statistical to the new language model, or you can say the audio language model domain?
I don't think anything has changed from the statistical stage. There is I don't think so. It's just that we are dealing with cost functions, but they are all having statistical interpretation. So I don't think it has changed anything what I was doing at the time and now. What it probably has changed, there's a lot of data, new architectures, new cost functions, and all those things. At the same time, we also have brought in a lot of opacity in the models. So even then, when I started in my masters, I was doing training neural networks. I had a good PhD person called Manish Sarkar, and he was working on fuzzy neural networks and so on. And he used to explain me, look, these are all standard statistical estimates. And then when I came to Hervé, and it was the same. Always neural networks are some kind of statistical estimators. Now you have to figure out what statistical quantity it is trying to model is the question. So essentially, despite all the things we are doing, we have an objective function setting. So there is some kind of quantity you are learning from the data. So within the data you have to try, and most of the learning is coming out of statistics. So essentially it is not changing. What it's changing probably is what we can do, what we can learn. Initially we had few amount of data, so we went with handcrafted features because and then we try to model. Then with more data, what happened, we said, look, handcrafted features can have limitations, because anytime you want to extract a handcrafted feature, you need to have a prior knowledge, something to tell, look, this is what I have to extract. But what changed with all the end-to-end and all those things, that was one of the work which we did on raw waveform and so on, was we tried to demonstrate that, okay, neural networks can learn them. You don't need to you don't need to tell. You can what's called relax your prior assumptions, but still you need some little assumptions when you're training the system. You still need them, but minimal priors, and let the data to figure out the feature representation and so on. And that's exactly we went on that line. So if today you don't have enough data, simple solution is to fall back to knowledge based features. So that's kind of the landscape that has changed essentially from my point. Otherwise, if you look at machine learning perspective, there are hardly 3 or 4 main problems, right? You can do classification, which is more like static, like phone classification, or not even phone, gender classification, and so on. And then another problem is sequence classification. You can have, and both can be formulated in Bayes rule, and then you have to estimate those parameters and so on. What neural network does is it can give you the posterior probability directly. You don't need to go to the right hand side of the Bayes rule to get likelihood priors and so on. It can learn those things, everything, and give you the posteriors.
Yeah.
Whereas, and then clustering for you, and other problem is for you is the what's called dimensionality reduction, regression problems. So these are all our problems are fitting in that. In the end, we are putting neural networks as an estimators there. So my feeling is that it has brought in lot of changes, but fundamentally we have not changed like the underlying things. We are changing the estimators. Today neural networks are one of the best estimators. I am sure tomorrow something else will come. It happened with hybrid system. People were using single Gaussians and so on, context independent phones. Hybrid system kind of started outperforming Gaussian based systems in that. Then they went to context dependent phones with GMMs, tying, state tying, and so on. GMMs started performing better than neural network. So people left neural network and they went into that. When the more data came, more resources came, people came back to neural network. So it will, I'm sure there will be another cycle coming by somewhere.
So what's your view on, like, what was your experience in the first Interspeech versus the Interspeech this year? Like, how was?
First Interspeech, it was my first conference actually was a national conference in India, where I went national conference on communication. So I had some idea what a conference is about. I had chances to meet people, talk to them, and so on. And the first Interspeech for me was in 2001, and it was in Aalborg, Denmark. It was a wonderful thing. At the time, we also used to do a lot of extracurricular activities around the conferences. So Aalborg, we traveled by train, I remember. We went by train to Copenhagen. And that weekend there was a World Cup qualifier match. And then we went to Aalborg, and Aalborg was very nice. It was one of the very good organization, because Aalborg is one of those Interspeech where lunch was there on the site. Lunch was there, you can meet people. I think Dalsgaard was the main it was also called Scandinavian Interspeech, and just before going to that was also I met Odette. Even before that we met in Nijmegen, and then again we saw Odette and all were there when I went to the first Interspeech. Then the paper I was presenting at that time was trying to look at how to model auxiliary information in speech recognition systems. So one of the auxiliary information we were trying to look was how to model pitch frequency information along with Kestrel feature information, and we were trying to look it from the Bayesian networks point of view. It was graphical models, and whether we concatenate them or we want to condition them. So in Bayesian networks you can write your joint distribution in many fashions. Depending upon that you can create the graph and you can study that kind of a thing. So I was doing that work, and interestingly what happened, I had next to me was another poster from MIT, and that was Karen's paper. And Karen's was also working on similar problem, but she was looking at energy aspects. So that's where I had a chance to meet Karen also, the Interspeech 2001 and so on. So it was a great experience in Aalborg, and it was those days when we used to have 5 days conference, and one day you had a half a day to tour kind of a thing. So it was great. At the same time, when I returned back to Switzerland after the conference, we had the September 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2001 September 11, the whole attack in New York.
Okay. Yeah.
People may not remember that actually right after that Interspeech, that event happened. And that it's a kind of event I can remember because of I always remember in connection with Interspeech also. It was a wonderful, very good way of things. I was a student. I was excited about learning what other works are doing. I meet some of the people like Rob Wonson. He was there, and he was looking at during his work. He was looking again. I wanted to look at how speaking rate is affecting the speech thing, and Rob Wonson's work was focusing on that before in the 90s itself. So I could see him, talk to him. So some of those people I could, and I got to meet Hinek again because I met him at IIT Madras when I was doing that. Then a lot of people like Hinek, Morgan, Chris Valakins, all these people I had chance to meet them. Roger Moore, I think at the time Roger Moore was the president, if I'm right, if I remember correctly. So that was a time. It was a great experience, and it's one conference where I always felt I learn a lot. Yeah.
So, like, how are you enjoying the view of course right now, like as an Interspeech venue?
I was initially a bit skeptical because the venue I felt was a bit far from the town, and usually when I come from conferences and all, I would like to explore the region a bit. Although I may not stay around, but after the evening maybe go around a little bit and explore it around. So this I thought it would be a major roadblock, but I didn't want to stay in the conference center, but rather I wanted to stay in the town. And luckily I found that you don't have to depend on transportation. You can take a bike and come here. So I'm just doing that, and it's really fun for me to just bike and come to conference and go back. It's kind of a thing which I'm not doing anymore much at home, but maybe if you're living in some Netherlands or Denmark or some other place, I'm sure you're doing more biking than anywhere. But I do more train rides. So it's nice. One thing is the weather is beautiful. So it sometimes is hot in this. It makes it gets you tired, but it's a nice place to be. Initially, I was a bit skeptical because of all these things from there, but after coming here, I don't mind this place.
So thanks for your time, and we'd like to have you again on Speech.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me, and it was pleasure talking to you.
Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this short bonus episodes. Stay tuned for our favorite speech researcher, and don't forget to subscribe whenever you are listening to our podcast, and follow us on basically SCASEC as well as X as well as on LinkedIn. Till then, have fun. Thanks.
Speech pitch by Iska Sak.